Welcome everyone to Oscar Care Group's webinar on the 2-hour and 4-hour food safety role. Today's session will equip you with a practical and scientific understanding of this role. We'll focus on aged care and childcare environment, but also showing how it applies to households and retail settings. Let's begin. Why the 2-hour, 4-hour food safety role matters. This role helps limit the total time food spent in the danger zone, which is critical for protecting vulnerables. This rule is really about limiting the total time food spent in the danger zone. And that's especially important when we are caring for vulnerable people like aged care residents, young children, or anyone with a weaker immune system. These groups are more likely to get sick from food that has been sitting out too long, even if it doesn't look or smell off. Let's take a closer look at the key concept behind the 2-hour and 4-hour rule, a critical guideline for handling potentially hazardous food safely. Here's how it works and when food is held at the temperature danger zone. So, less than 2 hours, the food is still safe, but you can use it or put it back in the fridge. More than 2 hours, but less than 4 hours, the food is still safe to eat, but it must be used immediately. Do not return it to the fridge. More than 4 hours, the food is no longer safe. It must be discarded or cannot use it again. Now, let's look at the breakdown of each part of this rule and understand why it matters. Part 1, which is the danger zone. This rule is all about limiting how long potentially hazardous food stays in what's called the danger zone, that is 5 and 60 degrees, where bacteria grow the fastest. In your workplace, the danger zone includes more than just obvious areas. It is anywhere food sits between 5 and 60 degrees. That could be the kitchen bench, a food preparation area, the dry stove, or even a trolley left in the hallway. Anywhere at room temperature where food is no longer being kept hot or cold. To understand how bacteria grow, think of it like a pyramid. One bacterium splits into 2, then those 2 split into 4, then 8, 16, and it keeps doubling. This means bacteria can grow fast if the conditions are right, which in our case, the right condition is the danger zone. Now let's look at the second part. If potentially hazardous food has been at room temperature for less than 2 hours, it is still safe to use or put back in the fridge. But why? Well, at this stage, bacteria are in what's called the lag phase. They are just waking up and adjusting to the environment, but they are not multiplying rapidly yet. That means there is minimal bacterial growth and the food remains safe. Now on to the third part. If potentially hazardous food has been left at room temperature between 2 and 4 hours, it should be used immediately. It is still safe to eat, but do not put it back in the fridge. Why not? Because at this point, bacteria are entering the log phase, also known as the rapid growth phase. This is when they start multiplying much faster. Cooling the food again won't undo the bacterial growth, so it's safest to serve and eat it right away. And finally, the fourth part, if potentially hazardous food has been at room temperature for more than 4 hours, it must be thrown away. At this stage, bacterial growth is likely to be very high and the food is no longer safe to eat. This rule is based on the bacterial growth curve, which shows how quickly bacteria multiply when food is kept in the danger zone between 5 and 60. The longer food stays in that zone, the greater the risk. Now let's look at the curve for a better visual. Looking at this simple bacterial growth curve on the slide, you will notice it's divided into 2 main phases, the lag phase and the log phase. And we have marked the 2-hour point right between them. In the lag phase, the bacteria are just getting used to their new environment. They are adjusting, not growing much yet. At this stage, bacteria are metabolically active but not multiplying quickly. So the food is still considered safe. That is why food can safely be used or returned to refrigeration within the 2 hours. But once we hit the log phase, bacteria multiplies very quickly. This is where food becomes unsafe, especially if it's sitting in the danger zone, which is 5 and 60. That's why we have the 2-hour forward rule. The idea is to keep food out of this rapid growth stage. The mark is a kind of warning line. Once food has been in the danger zone for more than 2 hours, we started to move into the high risk territory where bacteria can grow fast and make people sick. So, in simple terms, lag phase is slow growth, food is safe. Log phase is rapid growth where food is unsafe. And our job is to act before the rapid growth starts. This rule is about time and temperature control for potentially hazardous food. It's simple but powerful and strictly time-based. Now, a common question we get is, if food is still safe at 2 hours, why can't we just put it back in the fridge? Well, great question, and here's a simple answer. While some bacteria might start growing after those 2 hours, usually the amount hasn't reached a level that can make you sick. If consumed promptly, there is insufficient time for bacteria to multiply to harmful amounts. However, by the 2-hour mark, bacteria may have already moved into the log phase where they're starting to grow rapidly. Now, if we decide to cool the food down or store it again, that doesn't kill the bacteria. It only slows them down. It is like pressing the pause button. It do not make the food safer once that bacterial growth has already started. Then later, when that food is taken out again to be reheated or served, those bacteria pick up right where they left off. And if the reheating is not done properly, or if it is sitting out again, bacteria can reach a safe level much more quickly. So essentially, we would be extending the life of food that has already started bacterial growth, and that is a risk. That is why the rule says if it's been in the zone for more than 2 hours, eat it now, don't put it back in the fridge. It's about staying one step ahead of the bacteria and avoiding a second chance for them to grow. Now let's look at a few scenarios that are common experience in aged care and childcare. A common situation in aged care is holding food in bain-maries or hot trolleys. According to food safety standards, hot food must be held at temperature above 60 degrees. If the temperature drops below 60 degrees, the time it's spent in the danger zone must be closely monitored. For example, if a meal trolley leaves service at 11:45 a.m. and finishes at 1:15 p.m. without reheating, the food has spent 1.5 hours in the danger zone, which is still within safe window. However, if service extends for longer, then it must be used immediately or discarded after a maximum of 4 hours. That is why it is critical to monitor both temperature and holding time when transporting or serving food in an aged care setting. Now, let's talk about food delivery to serveries or distribution kitchens. A common routine aged care or child care setting, but easy to overlook when it comes to food safety. The key point is the 2-hour, 4-hour rule starts the moment food leaves temperature control, not just when the trolley leaves the kitchen, not just when it arrives at the serveries. Therefore, if hot or cold foods are being loaded onto a trolley at 11 a.m., and that process takes 30 minutes, then the trolley sits for another 30 minutes before meals are served. That is already 1 hour in the danger zone, and it must be added up with the total time out. That is when monitoring the time food leaves the kitchen, both the trolley loading time and the serving time must be taken into consideration, not just the departure and the arrival time of the trolleys. Now let's consider room service and late trays, which are often used when residents miss regular meal. The same 2-hour, 4-hour rule applies here. If a tray is prepared but not delivered or eaten right away, we must track how long it's been out of temperature control. If the tray is held under 2 hours and is still within safe temperatures, it can be safely served or returned to temperature control, which is a fridge. Past 2 hours, serve immediately. No reheating or returning for storage. And obviously, after 2 hours, it must be discarded. This means documentation is very important. Note the time the tray was plated, when it left the kitchen, and when it was delivered. Even when using warming cabinets or insulated covers, always check that hot food stays above 60 degrees and cold food above 5 degrees. Here is a common example: sandwich preparation. Sandwiches are often prepared mid-afternoon, chilled, and then later taken out for dinner service. While everything may seem under control, it's important to remember that time out of temperature control adds up. From when ingredients were taken out to prep time, interruption time during preparation while staff attends to the resident or the kid, serving time, room service trays, or even how long the tray sits in a resident's room. Be mindful of the cumulative time out. This is especially important when delivering to rooms where a resident may be asleep or taking longer to eat. This is a great example why documenting prep time, fridge time, serving time is key. It allows us to apply 2-hour, 4-hour rule properly, especially when delivering meals room to room. Let's shift to a real life example many of us can relate to, like, for example, picking up takeaway food on the way home from work. The same 2-hour, 4-hour rule applies here. Once hot or cold takeaway food is out of temperature control, time becomes a factor. If you get home and eat it within 2 hours, it's still safe. But remember, the time out must also take into consideration the time the food was out for preparation before it was sold to you. This rule applies when explain why we should not leave takeaway sitting in the car, on the bench, or in your bag while you keep doing your shopping for long. Remember, just like in care setting, time and temperature control protect health, whether it's for the residents or for your own family. Let's look at some common mistakes we've seen. Let's go over a quick example that highlights a common mistake that sandwich ingredients in aged care. On Monday, sliced ham and boiled eggs are taken out for sandwich prep. They are out of the fridge for 1 hour, then put back in. On Tuesday, they are used again, out for another hour. Each time, 1 hour gets recorded. But here's the issue: the times adds up. That's 2 hours total in the temperature danger zone. And under 2-hour, 4-hour rule, once food has been out for a total of 2 hours, it must be used immediately or discarded. It can't go back in the fridge for use the next day. Because refrigeration slows bacteria down, but it doesn't kill them. So each time food comes out, bacteria pick up where they left. Advice in this case: take out only a few slices of ham and egg to be used for the day only, and leave the rest of the stock in the fridge. A common mistake we often see is also restarting the time clock after reheating food. Under 2-hour, 4-hour rule, once food has been out of temperature control, even just once, that time continues to count even if food is reheated. Reheating does not reset the clock. For example, if food sat at temperature for 1.5 hours, then it is reheated and held for later, that 1.5 hours still count toward the 2 or 4-hour limit. Another common mistake is guessing how long food has been out instead of actually recording the time. In aged care, where residents are more vulnerable, relying on memory or rough estimate isn't good enough. 2 hour, 4 hour rule depends on accuracy, and that means using a clock, timer, especially not assumptions. One mistake that often goes unnoticed is not labeling food trays, especially when trays are made ahead of time or stored for later use. Without clear labels showing preparation or delivery time, it is impossible to apply the 2 hour, 4 hour rule accurately. Now we'll be looking at some best practices. Timers and logs are simple but powerful tools for food safety. Timers track how long food has been out of temperature control, making it easier to apply the 2 hour and 4 hour rule confidently. Log sheets capture preparation, service, and holding time, reinforcing food safety and demonstrating compliance during your audits. A best practice is using clear labels that show when food was taken out of temperature control. Whether it is food left on a bench, a trolley, or in a residence room, always record the start time. Don't just write prepared at or delivered to. Include the time it left cold or hot storage. This helps staff apply the 2 hour, 4 hour rule quickly without guesswork. For example, out of fridge at 4:15 p.m., used by 6:15 p.m. Good documentation protects residents and support compliance. It is a small habit that makes a big difference. One of the most important rules to remember is when in doubt, it out. If you're unsure how long food has been out, if it was not labeled or if temperature were not recorded, it is safer to discard it. The risk of foodborne illnesses far outweigh the cost of wasted food, especially in aged care where residents are more vulnerable. Trust the process, not your instincts. When records are missing or the clock isn't clear, don't take chances. Food safety always comes first. A key best practice in aged care is to train all staff regularly on food safety. It is not just for kitchen staff. Anyone involved in handling, serving, or delivering food needs to understand safe practices, including 2 hour, 4 hour rule, temperature control, and proper labeling. Regular training keeps everyone up to date, reinforces accountability, and builds confidence across the team. It also helps create a culture where safety is second nature, leading to better protection for residents and a stronger compliance overall. This brings us to the end of this webinar. If you need more food safety training, we are here to help. Choose from a range of food safety courses available online, in the classroom, or delivered on site for group bookings. Flexible options also available to suit your team and schedule. Thanks everyone who attended. If you would like to revisit any information from today's presentation, the recording will be available on our website in the coming weeks. Check your email and you will be notified when it's available. Have a wonderful day.